When you're ready.
Up here.
No, I know, but where?
Next, on my right? Yeah. On my left?
Okay, you're ready. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Bradley, and I'm a criminology professor who supports families and survivors impacted by police violence. Today, we are here to honor and remember the life of Regis Korchinski-Paquet, an Afro-Indigenous Canadian woman whose life was taken from us 6 years ago during an interaction with the Toronto Police Service. In a few moments, you'll hear from the parents of Regis, who continue to fight tirelessly for justice, truth, and accountability and systemic change. You will also hear from Kate Alexander, founder of End Violence Everywhere, and another strong advocate working to end all forms of violence against women and marginalized communities. Today, in honor of Regis, we are calling on the public to support the upcoming coroner's inquest this October. We are calling on the Ontario government to also amend both the Coroner's Act and the Special Investigations Unit Act to ensure meaningful accountability when police injure, seriously harm, or kill members of our community. In 2026, police must be held to the highest standard under the law. No person in crisis or in need of assistance should lose their life during an interaction with those entrusted to protect the public. For far too long, families and communities have lost confidence in Ontario's police oversight systems. Too often, investigations fail to provide transparency, accountability, or justice for grieving families. The investigation into the death of Regis Korchinski-Paquet left many serious concerns unanswered and reinforcing long-standing concerns about systemic anti-Black racism in policing and oversight institutions. Regis's case is not an isolated strategy. Research shows since the year 2000, there have been more than 871 police-involved deaths in Canada involving lethal force. Behind every one of those deaths is a family, a community, and a life that mattered. We believe the Coroner's Act must be changed so that recommendations arising from the coroner's inquest are mandatory and meaningfully implemented within a reasonable time frame. If agencies fail to act, there must be mechanisms for accountability, including financial consequences or reductions in funding for these agencies. For too long, governments and institutions have ignored recommendations from countless inquests and commissions and investigations without meaningful action. We are here today because we want justice, we want accountability, and transformative change for public safety systems so that no other family has to experience this pain. I will now turn it over to Peter Korchinski, the father of Regis and the co-founder of the Regis Forever Foundation.
Sorry, I don't have notes. Usually there was reporters in front of me asking me questions, but I'm going to start off by saying that I'm the father of Regis Korchinski, and I'm here to let people know that the SIU and the Toronto Police lied about the report, about what happened to my daughter. I think I knew the day that she died that I knew that what happened, and it took around just over 6 months for me to find out what exactly happened to her. And every time we went to the OIPRD or the SIU headquarters to let them know about anything that we found, they just basically ignored it. And so now this is why we're here today, because they didn't want to tell the truth. So we're here today to we're here today for other families, like Anthony Marriott, who is a survivor of a police interaction on the balcony. Other families, Anthony Oust, Cheyenne Fox, from Tyrell Beals, Maxine Smith. A lot of people don't know about Maxine Smith. who died. Also, Vanessa Amos, who died at Bathurst and blew her from a balcony fall also. And there's many others. There's just too many to go through in the short period. But if anybody wants to know the truth about what happened to my daughter, they could see a documentary that was written by a brave Toronto police officer. His name's Steve. His name's Jason Bannister, and he's from Mad Lab Press. He really stepped up and made a documentary about Regis, and he's going to do another one to show more about what happened. Thank you.
You'll now hear from the mother of Regis Korchinski-Paquet, Claudette Beals.
Hi, I'm Claudette. I'm Regis's mother, and today marks 6 years that my daughter's life has been taken at the hands of the police. I'm here today because I focus more on the SIU. I do not believe in police investigating police. We have had a lot of corrupted police here right now, this year in Toronto, and who's going to be investigating them? It will be police, and who will be getting away with all the garbage these guys are out there doing the SIU will be clearing them, and they will not be held accountable for anything, and this is wrong. And our community cannot put up with this anymore. Police need to be held accountable for taking our kids' life. My daughter's been gone for 6 years, and no one's held responsible for that. What are we supposed to do? And like I said, the police, they keep breaking the law, and it just seems to be all right. You're out there breaking the law. You're being paid. You're being suspended with pay. How does that work? I can't go get a job and break the law, and my bosses, unfortunately, will not be paying me for doing something that's wrong. So this is the kind of stuff that we cannot tolerate anymore. We should not have to put up with anything like this, because a lot of us parents, we're grieving, and we're grieving hard. There's nobody out here helping us. We have no help with where we need to go and be talking to somebody, counseling. No one's paying for any of that, but still, these police are getting paid. You know, they have no business coming in our homes doing the stuff that they do. And always they can walk away with it. Like, when does this stop? Like, we can have all the press conference we want, okay? But when is the change going to start to come? Like, so we need help from the community. We need help from everybody. We need to we need to take care of this here, because I'm not actually myself willing to put up with what the police are out here doing to our children. I can't take it no more. And if push comes to shove, then we're going to have to start fighting back. We cannot have the police treating us like we're pieces of garbage, because we're not. We're human beings here. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudette. You'll now hear from Kate Alexander from the End Violence Everywhere Foundation.
Don't apologize, Claudette. Please don't apologize. Traffic's worse here than it is in LA. I'm Kate Alexander, CEO and founder of End Violence Everywhere, a multinational charity supporting survivors of violence. And I would firstly like to take a moment to really hold Regis and everyone who has lost their lives in some form of police brutality. We all must recognize that we are one incident away from being united in the worst way with these families. All of us are one incident away, because there is no accountability. We're not here because we're anti-police. We're not here because we're anti-government. We're not here because we are anti-establishment. We're here because we're pro-accountability, when something goes wrong, there are consequences. Police are given an immense amount of responsibility, an immense amount of power. But they can wield that power, it seems, without any consequence. And police are human beings, just as survivors, just as victims are human beings. And we must humanize the entire processes. The SIU is effectively an institution that is appointed by the Attorney General. And a large majority of the people that work at the SIU are former police officers. We all know how these systems work. If you know people, you know people, and you finagle things, and that's how most businesses run, and the government is some form of business. So we need to understand that the public and the civilians need to step up and come forward for their own good to support these families, to support transparency, clarity, and integrity in these systems. We need public support. And again, unfortunately, everyone is one incident away from something catastrophic happening and there being no accountability. So take that with you today. Remember Regis. Remember everyone that has died by some form of police brutality. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. Regis was a beautiful person whose life and memory continues to live on in our hearts and in the movement for justice and systemic change. We ask the public to stand with us in demanding accountability, an end to all forms of police violence, and real investments in transformative approaches to public safety and community care. Say her name, Regis Korchinski-Paquet. Justice for Regis. We'll now take questions from the media. Thank you very much.
For Mr. Korchinski, or for anyone in the family who wants to speak to it, I'm wondering, the coroner's inquests, they can't lay charges, they can make recommendations that are not binding. What are you hoping to get out of this process?
I'm hoping that that will change. From my understanding, they say the criminal charges won't be brought about even if they find the truth, right, what happened to Regis. But in certain circumstances, that might change, and that's what we're hoping for.
Maybe I can try
Yeah,
to answer
sure.
this
Yeah.
question. One of the challenges that we have with the coroner's inquests, including those that are juried, is that those recommendations oftentimes sit on a shelf. They are received by government and zero accountability, zero actual response, even a timetable or commitment of whether or not those recommendations will be adopted. This is an extraordinary amount of time, energy, and emotional work that goes into carrying out an inquest, oftentimes years after the death of the individual. And I think what you're hearing today is that families and advocates are calling for accountability from the government, calling on them to ensure that those recommendations coming from the coroner's inquest are going to be binding. And so if that requires a change to the Coroner's Act to make it legislatively binding, then so be it. But right now, what we have is a system that is largely manufactured to present a sense of justice when no real justice is being delivered.
Follow up with that then, in addition to those calls, will you then be calling for the government to ensure that there is a specific timeline that these recommendations would be put into place, so that if those timelines aren't met, then there's that next step of, demanding that sort of that accountability is taken? As you mentioned, it just sort of sits in the ether once those recommendations come.
Accountability for agencies that have failed to do their job or failed to act to save lives, to reduce harm, can take place and look like many different things. But we need to have assurance from the government that they're not just going to receive this report and put it on the shelf. We have we have hundreds of coroner's reports that go back decades where the government has not acted on systemic change that has oftentimes been identified by those inquests. And so we go through another very expensive, another very lengthy and very complicated and cumbersome inquest where those inquest recommendations are put to the side. If asked if the coroner is asked, what does he think about the recommendations in the inquest reports that he has published and what the government has done with it, I would imagine if he was able to speak freely, his answer would be that he's disappointed. No one wants to see the harm that was inflicted on either Regis or anyone else ever to happen again. 6 years ago, Regis was living with mental health. She needed some help. Her loved ones called 911 expecting the first responders to provide the support. The police arrived shortly afterwards. She fell 24 stories and died. When we call 911, we expect help. We don't expect to see our loved ones then die behind closed doors and without explanation. So the coroner's inquest is to examine exactly what transpired moments leading up to Regis's death, and hopefully coming forward with a second set of recommendations that will be binding if there's changes to the Coroner's Act, legislatively binding if the Coroner's Act is to be amended to ensure that all those recommendations are to be considered seriously, and that those who didn't do their job or failed to do their job are going to face real consequences. And that's what this family is looking for, and that's what families who have faced similar tragedies in Ontario are looking for.
There was a proposal last year that the Solicitor General's office made to change the coroner's. This is probably for you, Kristyn, or maybe Jeffrey as well. But the proposal was generally to for in custody deaths specifically related to, I believe it was incarceration or in prisons, that the coroner would it would no longer be a mandatory inquest. The proposal was to have kind of the coroner kind of select independently if there would be an inquest or not. And can you tell me a bit about, I guess, your reaction to that that kind of change? Is that concern you if it spreads out to a broader understanding of coroner inquests?
It absolutely concerns me as the justice critic for the official opposition. I recognize that the government changes came about through regulation during the weeks leading up to the Christmas break. It had a very short consultation period for the public to provide input, and I know that many advocates weren't able to sort of speak up in a timely fashion. We know that right now corrections, the correctional facilities are overcrowded. We hear the horrific stories, the humane conditions, where inmates are tripled and sometimes quadruple bunked for cells that are made for just 2 individuals. We hear about the extraordinary use of lockdowns and isolation, oftentimes because the prisons and the detention facilities have been chronically, grossly underfunded by the government. So they have created this problem, along with the fact that over 83% of those who are in government custody are simply awaiting trial. They are legally innocent. And so the challenge we are seeing with this government is that they don't want you to know what's happening. They're removing any tools that are available for accountability because they're not fixing the problem structurally. So the changes that they have invoked around corrections is just another way of them hiding the scandals and their policy failures. No different than when they've decided that they're no longer going to record hospital visits and emergency visits and scrubbing medical data because they don't want you to know what's happening in the failure of the hospitals. The fact that they've eliminated the public's ability to seek information through the FOI laws by gutting that 40-year body of FOI laws is just another way of the government saying nothing for you to see here, giving themselves carte blanche to do as they please.
If you wanted to comment, a spokesperson from the Solicitor General's office told me that the intention behind the changes to in custody reviews, coroner's reviews, was to support a more timely, system-wide review of in-custody deaths and help ensure recommendations are delivered more efficiently. I think there's language around too, but the coroner's inquest being difficult for families, obviously, to go and kind of relive that stuff. Is there any validity to that? Could the process be maybe easier on families?
I mean, how you make it easier on families is by ensuring quick access to the truth, accountability, and justice. That's how you're going to make the emotional burden and the grief of families ease somewhat. It is not true, based on what you've just read by the Solicitor General's account to his changes to no longer having automatic inquests into inmate deaths while in custody. And I would say that if we take a look back to why we have those initial and mandatory inquests into deaths in corrections, is largely because those individuals were in government custody. They were in government care. And when something goes wrong like that, you should have a clear, impartial inquest that's going to happen in a timely fashion, where the recommendations are going to be allowed to see the light, but also more importantly, what is the government planning to do afterwards? So we have, Mr. Yusuf Fakiri has been in this media studio multiple times. Those 57 recommendations from that inquest, they still have not been acted on. And the very first top line recommendation from that inquest was to have the government recognize that if someone is living with mental illness, the prisons are not an appropriate place. It is not an appropriate environment to treat someone who has mental illness. So what the Solicitor General has said is, I would denounce and say it's false. He wants us to think that they're doing this for efficiency, but really it's to hide their own broken record on how broken the correctional system is.
Again, to any member of the family who'd like to speak to it, I'm wondering, you mentioned other families who have also lived tragedies like yours. What needs to change specifically? What would you like to see as change be it in the police or in the system?
Well, here so one of the really big things I want to see is, I don't feel that police should be investigating police, because that's how they get away with everything. So I feel that you were a civilian before you got hired, right? And so why don't you hire civilians to do that job and train them properly? And let's see how that works. But as far as having police investigating police, that actually really doesn't make any type of sense, because they're never going to be held to accountability. They're not going to be held accountable for their actions. So we need to be hiring other people to actually do that job now. Change, right? Because that's what we're out here looking for. We are literally looking for change. So we need the system to start to change. And maybe things will start to work out a little better for us.
I could just add to that too. A lot of the families that we work with have no trust in the oversight agency. So like the Special Investigations Unit is not functioning to its, level that it should. Not only do, officers not have to actually be interviewed or turn over their notes or videos, all of that can just be denied, and that really abdicates them from any responsibility. So they have like legal immunity, right? Until that changes and the SIU is completely overhauled, families will continue to suffer, and survivors and family members will have no sense of justice and no sense of support, because they're not even considered victims in the system. So it's challenging.
And this is unanimous, actually, across seemingly like all parts of the justice system, to be very frank. We see this with the Renfrew inquest. We see this on and on again with all of these systemic issues, that it's all these inner workings and buddies helping buddies. And that is not civilian oversight. There's flowery language on the SIU website that, we're this great, wonderful agency, but in reality does not match that marketing. And that is a unanimous thing across the justice system in Ontario and Canada beyond. And the consequences of this are real. And we're seeing this in increases of crime. Jeff, you mentioned increases of police brutality. So all of these components are working together, and they're all failing together. We need exactly what Claudette said.
I'm going to add one thing. We know that we have, really capable and talented men and women who serve in the police. And right across Ontario, it's one of the most difficult jobs. You ask them to serve the public, they do so in bulletproof vests sometimes. And, one thing I have seen is that there have been many excellent officers who have been wanting to tell the truth, who perhaps have a different version of what transpired, and they themselves are not heard within the associations that they serve. So, creating a process that allows for the truth to see the light is critically important. And really, that's what the community here is asking for. They're asking for true accountability from the government. They're asking for accountability and system change from the police. And that is something that we should all be striving towards. It's what's going to ultimately make Ontario safer and to make Ontario a safer place, especially for those who are Black, Indigenous, racialized, and people living with mental illness and seeking help, because the interactions have oftentimes been fatal from that community with their interactions to the police. So it is not a one-off situation. It is a systemic change that this community is asking for. Thank you very much for attending the press conference. We really appreciate everyone being here today. And thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Peter and Claudette. What's that? Oh, please, go ahead.
And Chantal Moore.
And Mike Martin.
Okay, there's a lot of people. Mike Martin, Chantal Moore, Jamal Francique. I got Bobby Remrib's mother here. And her documentary is also on Mad Lab Press if you want to watch that. Thank you.
Bobby Ram.
Bobby Remrib.